My name's Simeon Costello. We're here at John O'Groats, the most northeasterly point of Scotland, travelling down to Land's End, the most southwesterly point in Cornwall, to see if it's possible if we can go the length of the UK using only local buses. It's going to take us 4 days and we're about to set off. We're on our first bus. Travelling through Scotland was relatively easy. The routes are well planned out and they are regular enough to keep you on track. With most of Scotland completed, it was time to enter England. Throughout the journey, one thing that was really interesting to me was the history of public buses. So we took a trip to the London Bus Museum and spoke to Ian to find out a little bit about how they've changed within the last 200 years.
The first recognised bus, was George Shillybere in 1829. I wouldn't regard it quite so much as a bus because it wasn't omnibus for everybody. It was quite expensive in those days, a shilling a fare, which I reckon is probably equivalent to a half a day's wage for the average working man. About 50 years later, the horse buses, which are more like stage coaches, came along, 26 passengers, so beginning to be reasonable for taking people around. One horse bus pulling 26 people would need 2 horses on the flat, probably during the course of the day, maybe as many as 6 pairs of horses. A lot of horses producing a lot of pollution, both the solid kind and the liquid kind. There was an article in the Times around the 1880, and it reckoned that by 1950 London would be 9 feet deep in presents from horses. The motorbus came into its own First World War, taking the troops to the front and the casualties back again. And it fairly rapidly developed from there. They started putting roofs on the buses, cabins around the drivers, became less of a cold, damp adventure and more of a pleasant trip.
Today we're going to be heading back into England. We're going to Dumfries first and then on to Carlisle, and then we've got a few more buses until we reach our overnight stop at Preston.
The journey so far was going well. We were over halfway through the trip, and with the finish line in sight, I started to realise how valuable these network of buses were to us. I chatted to Helen from Stagecoach to find out a little bit more about what they're doing to improve their network.
It's incredibly important. I think a lot of people have this perception that actually everybody has a car, that everybody can afford to have a car, and that's the easiest way to get around. But actually, for a huge amount of people, buses are still tremendously important. You know, we are responsible for delivering millions of pounds worth to the economy every single day because of the amount of people we transport to work, the amount of children we also get to college, families on days out, older people. So in terms of rural isolation, obviously we have a huge part to play in that as well. Just getting people out of their houses. And we can go places that other public transport can't. So, you know, a train is always on a fixed track. A bus, we can change our route to meet demand. You know, any new developments, anything new that's going on, we can be there. So it's a constantly evolving network, and we are constantly looking at ways to increase our passenger numbers and be able to provide what they need. We've invested millions of pounds in new vehicles over the last financial year alone. So part of that was prompted through our acquisition of Plymouth, part of it through launching a new Falcon service. But altogether between May 2015 and April 2016, I can tell you here, we spent £13 million on new buses. That's 34 buses across our local bus network. It was 27 brand new buses for our new Plymouth operation and 8 luxury coaches for Falcon. So that is where a lot of our money goes. We plough it straight back into the company and improving services.
Stories.
Go Buster.
I was nearing the end of my journey, and I'd grown fond of the public bus network. But the true test was to find out what the general public thought of them. So we headed out into Exeter to ask people their feelings on bus travel.
So I tend to use my bus pass because I'm an older person. For that reason only, really, because I just don't want the hassle of having to drive in and also having to find somewhere to park.
I don't have a car these days, but I generally used a car in the past when I could afford one. Now, of course, I've got a bus pass, which encourages me to use buses.
We got a very good value for the free transport, and I used it quite a lot.
I think it's been a lifeline for quite a few of them. The introduction of low-floor buses, buses that will lower themselves at stops, means that those that are not very able to get along certainly wouldn't have been able to get onto some of the buses that we have in our museum here. I think that has become quite important.
Thank you.